I'm joined by Chris Van Hollen, the congressman from Maryland, who's the top Democrat on the House Budget Committee. Thanks for the time. Appreciate it. A lot of moving balls here in terms of spending. Let's talk about the threat of a shutdown right now. We can have a shutdown on Friday.
Well, I think the jury's still out. As you said, there are a lot of balls in the air. They could still drop. People are trying to come to a resolution to avoid a government shutdown. It would be a huge mistake for everybody, in my view, to take this to a government shutdown. But you've heard from the Tea Party wing of the Republican Party in the House say, if we don't get 100% our way, let's shut down the government. And I hope wiser heads will prevail.
$33 billion in spending cuts is the offer on the table from Democrats, from the White House. First of all, have they given away the store, or are they giving away too much?
Well, we don't know what the cuts are. It is a big amount of cuts, given the fact we're talking about a relatively small size of the budget. That's what people miss in this conversation. We're only talking about 12% of the federal budget, and within those confines, these are some significant, immediate, and deep cuts that will have potentially very negative impacts on lots of programs, investment in education, investment in NIH research, that kind of thing. But that's why the composition of this cuts is so important. We've said we'd like to see more of the cuts come out of areas that won't have negative impacts immediately on critical programs.
Look at the politics of this, and you're obviously an astute political mind running the campaign committee for House Democrats in the past. If there's a shutdown, is this going to hurt both sides equally? This is not a repeat of 95-96, which Republicans felt the brunt then.
Look, I think this hurts everybody because it says to the American people, we can't get our act together. It sends a bad signal to the international community at a time when we're coming up on what is an even more difficult decision, which has to do with the debt ceiling and extending the full faith or credit of the United States. If we're not able to resolve this, people are going to get very nervous with respect to our ability to handle some of those other issues.
Well, this issue hasn't even been resolved, and your counterpart, the House Budget Committee Chairman Paul Ryan, rolling out tomorrow $4 trillion in cuts over the next 10 years. His budget plan being unveiled. What do you make of the Ryan plan, and what does it mean for the debate going forward?
Well, we haven't seen the entire plan yet. We've caught glimpses of it. And in many ways, it is the same old ideological agenda, except this time on steroids. What do I mean by that? Unlike what the Commission recommended, the Bipartisan Fiscal Commission, they do nothing on the revenue side. They keep in place tax breaks for the folks at the very high end of the income scale. The Commission did not keep those in place. They do not do any of the revenue reform with respect to closing loopholes in a way that will generate some revenue to help reduce the deficit. So they do it all on one side of the ledger. It's not a balanced approach, and in that sense, it's not serious in comparison to what we've seen from the bipartisan groups that have been out there.
But isn't Chairman Ryan doing something that the President and congressional Democrats have not done, and that is at least tackling the issue of entitlements? He's put a plan out there. Does he deserve credit for that?
Well, in fact, the President and congressional Democrats did put a plan on the table last time around as part of the health care reform bill. Alice Rivlin, who I know spoke earlier on your show, was in front of the Budget Committee and said it's very important to keep that in place because it will help drive down costs throughout the system. And that's the mistake they're making here. You can't, the big driver of costs are throughout the entire healthcare system, not specifically in any one sector. For example, Medicare or Medicaid. Medicaid costs actually have grown much slower than elsewhere. So yes, reform. We did about $500 billion of Medicare reform as part of the health bill. You know what the response was? Negative ad against our members aimed at seniors. So don't tell us that we haven't done Medicare reform. We have different approaches to this. Their approach puts all the risk of rising health care costs on the senior on Medicare. We think that's wrong.
All right, Chris Van Hollen, the congressman from Maryland.